All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session by Burwood Group. My name is Colleen Berry. I'm Burwood's Marketing Director, and I'm thrilled to introduce our webinar session today on Microsoft Server and Exchange End-of-Support Strategy. A recorded version of this webinar, as well as the slides, will be available afterwards, and we'll send to all attendees and registrants within 24 hours of today's event. So as we begin, I'd like to introduce today's presenter. Derek Smith is a solution architect within Burwood's architecture practice. Derek has a wide range of technical expertise, including cloud, networking, virtualization, and security. He's recently been a tremendous asset to our clients, especially in conversations on cloud strategy and Microsoft Azure. And I really encourage all of you to take advantage of that expertise on this call by engaging with the content. So we've allocated 30 minutes for today's topic. Derek will kick us off with a short presentation, hopefully followed by open Q&A from all of you. If you have questions during, I am more than happy to accept those questions via the chat and ask on your behalf. And once Derek finishes his presentation, I'll unmute all lines to encourage direct Q&A participation. So for those just joining, welcome to this webinar on Server and Exchange End-of-Support Strategy. I'll now introduce Derek Smith, Solution Architect at Burwood Group, and today's presenter. Derek, please take it away.
Thank you, Colleen. Greetings, everybody. My name is Derek Smith, and as Colleen said, I am a Solution Architect with Burwood Group. I've been doing IT now for the better half of 12 years. Spent a lot of time with Microsoft and the Windows platform overall over those years. I do have a heavy background in networking as well, and network security and security in general. I've spent the last about 4 or 5 years working with the Azure platform and all of the cloud offerings that Microsoft as well as the Azure platform can offer you from a cloud computing perspective. Today's agenda for the webinar, we'll be looking at Windows Server and Exchange end-of-support strategy, specifically on what are the paths of migration for Windows Server and Windows Exchange. Any common questions we do come across from clients when they ask us what that migration or what their strategy should be to move on from Windows Server 2008 as well as 2008 R2, and open it up for any questions and answers you might have around your specific scenarios, whether they be specific applications or just some general questions around Windows Server 2008 and Exchange 20. Just to reiterate, that date for end of support is coming. It's January 14th, 2020, as roughly 4 months and 22 days from today. So go ahead and be migrated off either Windows Server 2008 or Exchange 2010. When we look at some of the migration paths for you, whether it regards to Windows Server 2008 or 2008 R2 and Exchange 2010, definitely the first recommended path we talk about is cloud, cloud, and more cloud. The reason being is at Ignite last year, Microsoft announced that they would be offering 3 years of extended support for Windows Server 2008 or 2008 R2 if you rehost those servers or applications within the Microsoft Azure platform. Typically, if you were to keep these workloads on-prem, you would have to pay for that extended support annually at a pretty hefty price. However, if you decide to move them to Azure, Microsoft waives that price tag for that extended support, and it is offered to you for free if you rehost it within the Azure ecosystem. Now, you still can migrate to other cloud providers like AWS or Google, but you still would also have to pay for that extended support for 2008 or 2008 R2 with regards to hosting those applications in those other cloud providers. With Exchange Server, obviously the natural evolution would be to migrate to Office 365. Microsoft has had a fairly robust software as a service platform for Exchange now for almost a decade, and there are multitudes of migration options migrating off Exchange Server 2010 into the Office 365 platform. So I would strongly urge you to consider as a migration path to move to Office 365. If for whatever reason that just isn't necessarily your cup of tea, or you still have certain workloads that you feel are best suited for on-prem, there are certainly paths in order to address these issues if you wish to remain on-prem or within an on-prem data center. Microsoft recommends that you stand up a new version of either Windows Server 2016 or 2019 and migrate those applications or roles running on those various servers that are on 2008 or 2008 R2 over to these new servers. I would recommend starting with at least 2016 with an eye towards moving to 2019 in the future. But given that 2016 has been out now for roughly 2.5, 3 years, stability on that platform is probably your best path. That being said, also with Exchange Server, I would recommend migrating up to Exchange Server 2016 or your on-prem email server should you have some type of compliance or regulatory requirement that requires you to remain on-prem with your email. However, I will mention as a caveat that Exchange Online addresses about 99% of those compliance and regulatory requirements these days. There's just a very few rare instances in which you would not migrate to the cloud and not be able to address those issues. But the option is still available. Microsoft still supports the Exchange platform on-prem, both in 2016 and the new version that was released back in October with Exchange Server 2019. One additional addendum I would add is you can set it up in a hybrid fashion with Office 365. So if there are some users you wish to put up into the cloud, some other users you wish to remain on-prem, that is certainly an option with Exchange Server 2016 or 20. And then finally, software as a service. The reason why this is a migration path for you is maybe your application running on Server 2008, 2008 R2 is not supported on Windows Server 2016 or 2019. I encourage you to look to see if that application is offered as software as a service, or maybe there is a different vendor that provides a newer, more modern application experience. So it would behoove you to look at those other application vendors to see if they have a more modern way of delivering applications. Server 2008 and Server 2008 R2 will no longer be patched. We'll have significant security holes and other vulnerabilities that hackers and other government actors will look to exploit. So migrating to a platform where all of the underlying infrastructure is taken care of for you, and so you just have to consume the application, would be a worthwhile business decision. And obviously, Office 365 is a software as a service by Microsoft, but hosted Exchange is an offering from some other application vendors. So if Office 365 is not your cup of tea, but you still would like to consume email in a hosted fashion, Exchange as a hosted platform is an offer. Common questions we get from our clients today. Azure, AWS, or the Google Cloud Platform? Which cloud is my best option for moving my current Windows Server 2008 and 2008 R2 workloads? The easy answer is Azure, given the fact that Microsoft is willing to offer you the 3 years of extended support at no cost should you decide to rehost your workloads in Azure. Not saying that AWS or GCP is a bad option. Certainly moving to the cloud, if it makes sense from a business perspective, is a worthwhile decision. However, they do not currently offer any way to guarantee you any extended support for your Server 2008 or 2008 R2 workloads. So the cost benefit is much more significant from going to Azure. Which operating system should I upgrade to? As I alluded to earlier, the current recommended operating system is Server 2016. Certainly you can migrate to 2019 should you choose to do so. Common question I see around this is the fact that some people want to migrate to Server 2012 R2. I would caution against that. The reason is Server 2012 R2 will also be end of support in 3 years. So you will be back in this same cycle in another 18 months worrying about upgrading all of those workloads. So moving to at least 2016 is the recommended path. So as you enjoy at least 5 years of continued support on that server platform, and then another refresh cycle can come around and you can migrate to whatever operating system is available 5 years down the road. And the last question is, if I migrate to the cloud, is my data secure? Am I protected against outside threats? I get this question a lot with regards to the cloud. There's multitudes of security options in today's world with regards to cloud. Role-based access controls, firewalls, data protection, encryption, you name it. There's a wide breadth of security options should you choose to move your data and your workloads to the cloud. Does that mean you'll be bulletproof against threats? No, but you are considerably more protected than you were, say, 4 or 5 years ago when a lot of people were hesitant to move to the cloud. So it's certainly a strong option to consider as you go through this next server OS refresh cycle. Some other common questions we see. My application provider offers a SaaS option, but it's cost prohibitive. What should you do? Couple of ways you can approach that. You can talk to your application provider, see if they're willing to provide you some type of discount to make it less cost prohibitive. You can migrate that current workload in its form into, say, the Azure cloud and continue to run it. Or look at a different provider, see if they're willing to be competitive and offer you, the similar features at a better price point for you. So certainly explore your options. Don't necessarily be beholden to that single application provider and see what options are available for you. Many in my organization believe that cloud is not secure. What alternatives do I have to meet this deadline? If your organization believes that the cloud just isn't the place for them, consider the on-prem upgrade options, upgrading to Server 2016, 2019, Exchange 2016, 2019. Those are completely acceptable alternatives. Those operating systems have multitudes of new features and security initiatives that can help secure your workloads and ensure that for the next 5 to 10 years, you're on a supported platform. Our organization must meet HIPAA, PCI, SOC 2, HITRUST, NIST, you name it, standard requirements. How can you ensure that I maintain this compliance if I go to the cloud? A number of the cloud providers today are HIPAA, PCI, SOC 2, HITRUST compliant, and they have various documentation and/or websites that you can go to and retrieve that documentation that shows that they are meeting these regulatory requirements standards. In addition, some of the cloud providers offer features and/or services within their cloud platform to ensure that you are meeting these standards from a workload perspective. So the options are growing and continue to grow within the cloud, and more auditors and regulators are seeing that cloud is a way to go for a lot of enterprises and city governments, hospitals, you name it. And so they are less hesitant to slap you on the wrist for going to the cloud so long as you are meeting the guidelines provided by the requirements. And that concludes my presentation today. I hope addressed some of your general questions with regards to Windows Server 2008 and 2008 R2. We will now open it for any open discussion and Q&A.
Excellent. Thanks, Derek. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute all lines now. Feel free to jump in if you have questions. I do have a few that have come in here through the chat, so I will go ahead and start with those. Derek, regarding the paying for the extended support, any requirements for obtaining this for the additional 3 years?
Yes, so if you wish to get the extended support, you have to have a current software assurance or enterprise subscription agreement with Microsoft. So if you bought your licenses via OEM or some other channel, you can actually not receive the extended support updates directly through Microsoft. You have to have either software assurance or that enterprise agreement in order to obtain those extended support agreements.
Great. Okay, thank you. Another one, I think you said, so let's just validate. If we don't want to migrate to Azure, any way to get free additional support if cloud of choice is AWS or Google Cloud Platform?
Yes, unfortunately, no, there is not a current way to obtain extended support updates for free without migrating to Azure today. AWS and or Google do not have any sort of implicit agreement with Microsoft to provide that. So if you would like to take advantage of those free extended support updates, Azure really is only your only cloud of choice, or you would have to remain on-prem.
Got it. Okay, and a couple more here. I have Windows Storage Server 2008. Is that end of life on January 14th, 2020 as well?
Short answer is yes. So a lot of people, there are roughly 16 versions of Windows Server 2008 and 2008 R2, whether it be storage, Hyper-V, several others. So all of those versions are end of support come January 14th, 2020. So even if your SANs or hypervisors are running these specialized versions of Windows Server, they will be end of support, and you need to find a way to either update or migrate off those platforms.
Great, thanks. All right, a couple more. What is the recommendation for current hybrid O365 and Exchange on-prem companies? What reasons are there to keep an Exchange on-prem?
Typically, a couple of the situations we've seen have come from some type of legal or document hold where the requester has required to provide so much history of emails. So typically we'll see clients have to remain on-prem if they're in an ongoing legal issue or discovery issue from some type of regulation violation or something of that nature. Those are really about the only situation we tend to see when it comes to needing to remain on-prem. Most other the times when it comes to HIPAA or PCI or HITRUST, all of those standards can be met by moving to either a hybrid model or even a fully cloud Exchange Online model with the built-in security features.
This is Jonathan Barrett with Orbis.
Hi, John.
Hi, quick question. We are in a hybrid model of Exchange 2010 with Office 365. The only mailboxes left are 2 administrator accounts. Is there a way that we can migrate off of the hybrid model so we don't have to worry about upgrading Exchange 2010 to something else?
Yeah, certainly. When you're in the hybrid model, you actually should be able to go into the admin console and move those remaining mailboxes into Office 365. And once that's done, you can go ahead and sever that hybrid connection. The only caveat is you need to make sure that you maintain your Active Directory synchronization between your, I'm assuming you have an on-prem AD with Office 365, so those user identities stay in sync.
Yeah, that's correct. My understanding was for a period of time, before it was really Azure AD Connect, while it was still DirSync, an Exchange on-prem hybrid was required in order to be a quote-unquote supported configuration by Microsoft. So is a hybrid Exchange server no longer a requirement for that?
Correct, yes. If you have updated to the most recent Azure AD Connect, you don't have to have that set up. So you can more than welcome move those remaining mailboxes and spin down the Exchange 2010.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And I have one final one here in the chat, Derek. If I decide to migrate my Windows Server 2008 R2 workloads to Azure, are there any requirements that I must meet to do so?
No, you're more than welcome to move them into those workloads. The one caveat I will mention is that you need to make sure when the workloads are set up that you tick the Azure hybrid benefit that states that you are bringing your own license to Azure. This essentially ticks some little database back in Microsoft to let them know that you are bringing your 2008 workloads into Azure, and so you get on the list for the free extended updates to be provided to your Windows 2008 and Windows 2008 R2 workloads.
Great. All right, that is everything I have in the chat. Any additional questions from the live audience for Derek? All right. Well, I think that takes us to the end of our session today then. We'll pop the contact info up here on the screen. You'll find Derek and myself as well as Keith, Derek's Solution Architect Associate and another Microsoft expert on our team. You're welcome to reach out to any of us directly with questions. Thanks everyone for joining and listening today. As I mentioned at the beginning, everyone registered will receive this recording and presentation deck within the next day. So I encourage everyone to connect directly with us, or feel free to follow Burwood in general on our Twitter and LinkedIn feeds especially. We share lots of great content on a regular basis there, and we're always looking for additional topics of interest for our following webinars, so please reach out to us anytime. With that, I'll go ahead and wrap this up. So thank you, Derek, and thanks everyone for joining Burwood today, and everyone have a wonderful day and holiday weekend. Thanks, everyone.